Hello friends, welcome to the session. In last session we talked about state and how can we make a component dynamic from inside the component itself. So in this session we will learn more about arrow function that we used over here and why we use this arrow function, what is the problem with using normal function inside class component. We will talk about that. So before going into the arrow function, let's just make it as a plain function rather than an arrow function and see what happens. So I will simply delete this arrow and this will make the function normal function that we are using in JavaScript. So let's see what happens when we hit the increment button. See, so we ran into some error, right? Because it is saying this is undefined. So here what happening is inside this function we have something called this binding. So while we are using this inside of the function, rather than representing this as a parent class, this refers to this function itself. So inside this function we don't have setState method or this state property. So this is causing us error that we don't have this setState method and this state inside of this function, because this is referring to this function rather than this class. I think you get what I mean to say. So in this scenario what we do is we wrote a constructor, and inside a constructor if we use this, so inside a constructor if we use this, then this will refer to the class, not the constructor, because constructor is bind with class. So we need to bind this class this with this function this. So how can we do that is we will do this dot on increment, and this will select the function here, and we will bind our class this we used here is the this of class rather than this function. So seems it sounds pretty confusing, but what it is saying that when we are using this inside this on increment function, it should represent the class, not the function. So this is doing that. So before writing this code we need to call super, and what super does is we have extend this react.component, and this super execute the constructor of react.component class. So we should write super in here. So now we bind it class this to this function, so this will work as expected. We don't ran into this is undefined error. So this is what we need. So see, normally using a function cause error because function have something called this bind with itself, and when we use arrow function, the arrow function don't have any kind of this binding, so we don't need to bind this whole thing to the arrow function. So that is why we used arrow function in last session. So this is what arrow function does, and this is what this binding is. So that's all for this session, and in next session we will learn about conditional rendering. So thank you for watching.